Bluff Street on a Sunday, teaching me how to ride a bike, and my dog Colby bit the tire and I wrecked and I skinned my face all up. And I've never seen my dad more protective of me. I'm so grateful for my addiction. I'm not proud of it. I'm grateful. Me and Dad had a lot of problems in our relationship. But when my kids got taken away, and Kyle got taken away, and I was in the hospital, Dad came into the hospital to visit me, and he told me that heroin kidnapped his daughter. And the worst part is there's no ransom he can pay to get her back. And he doesn't know if I'm strong enough to do it on my own. And that was the changing point in my life, hearing those words. And he was my biggest supporter through my whole recovery. He used to call me all the time and we'd talk through things. He didn't understand that my whole life my thinking works a little bit different than his does. He would say one thing and I would take it as he wasn't improving or didn't care or whatever, and he was just trying to give me advice. But I took it the complete opposite way. And so he would sit down with me and have a half-hour conversation about one sentence that he said that I took offense to, and he would ask me how I got from here to here, and he took the time to know me and understand me and know my way of thinking. Through all the counseling that I did through my recovery, I got to work with Dad one-on-one. And I'm very grateful to say that in the end there was no regrets. There was no ill feelings. There was nothing. It was the most perfect relationship a dad and daughter could absolutely have. One of his favorite things to do when he'd come into town is he'd come to Bishop's and sit there and just watch me work and watch my attitude that I learned from him. He didn't know how I could get away with talking to the customers like I did and still get such good money out of it. He absolutely loved seeing me succeed. We used to have phone calls all the time about my tips. So every Saturday and Sunday I would call him and we'd go over my tips. And his favorite was hearing the stories about my $100 tips. And I would tell him what happened and how I got it. And he would just be so amazed. Dad always used to say, I don't have to pick my favorites. They already know who they are. And it's so true. He made each one of us feel like his absolute favorite. When we were in his presence, we were it. He didn't have to pick. He didn't have to choose. Because we were all his favorites at one point. I really miss my dad. He's not going to come today. It's easier to pretend that he's still in Spain boat. And I'm just waiting for him to come now. I live in this pretend world until I need to call him. And now it's real. And it sucks. I'm not happy about it. Thank you guys for all coming. What kind of man gets through funerals? Like, really? I don't understand it. But I'm grateful for it.
Bill, Jesse's younger brother. Listening to all you guys today, I'm just convinced that Jesse had some kind of time traveler powers where he could spend so much time with everybody and get to know them and love them and do so many fun and amazing things with everybody here. It feels like everybody is Jesse's best friend, his best mom, his best brother, cousin, dad, husband. I first got to know Jesse when I was just a little bit younger than Coulter, and I lived just about a block away from Jesse up by the Bluff Street Park, and we went to Dixie High School together, and he was about 6 months older than I am, and he had his driver's license, and I would go down, and the bus stop was right across the street from his house. So I'd walk down to the bus stop, get on the bus, and ride it. It was my junior year in high school. I had a summer birthday, so I didn't have my driver's license yet. One time he said, "Hey Phil, why don't you jump in my blue truck with me, and I'll give you a ride?" And I just thought, wow, this is great, because when you're in high school, you don't want to ride the bus, right? And so that was the first, really kind thing that Jesse did for me. We both graduated from high school, went our separate ways. I hadn't seen him for at least 10 years. When the next time I saw him, I was in Walmart, and I was walking down the aisle, and I see this tall, in high school, he was like Justin Bieber. Last time I saw him, he was dancing disco with Belle, and that was my memory of Jesse. So I'm in Walmart, and I see this tall Marlboro man walking down the aisle with a wife and 2 little kids, and I had no idea who it was. And he says, "Phil?" And I just looked at him, and I had to study his face for about, a few seconds. I went, "Jesse?" I had no idea it was him. So, at that time, he was a cowboy, and I always thought he was just like Justin Bieber disco guy, So I'd never seen that side of him. But it was kind of crazy, because that was the time in my life when I just started writing music. And everything that I wrote sounded like a country song, and I really wasn't a country cowboy guy at all. But I asked him what he was doing, and he said he'd been singing a lot of karaoke and different things, country music. And I was like, really? And then there was this thing called the Country Showdown that was on the 4th of July every year in St. George. And my wife and I had done it the year before, because I wrote a song that sounded like country music. And my wife was pregnant this year, and she wasn't going to be my singing partner at the Country Showdown. So I asked Jesse, I said, "Hey, you want to do this Country Showdown with me?" And he said, "Sure." So that was the beginning of the Younger Brothers. He had an older brother, Kelly, of course, and I had an older brother, Brent. And we wanted to pick a name that kind of represented who we were and also sounded kind of rugged, like rugged Western cowboys. So we picked the Younger Brothers. And I kind of used Jesse through our whole Younger Brothers kind of partnership, where I wrote a bunch of songs, and it seemed like my songs lived vicariously through Jesse. He was the great idea for almost every song I ever wrote. With his rugged cowboy riding a motorcycle and doing all kinds of things that I never did. I was just this, fold my arms, go to church guy. And Jesse did all the fun stuff. I kind of looked at him and just wondered, how is this ever going to turn out for this guy? He's just wild and crazy. And we'd get on stage, and he'd say things. And Coulter, there were lots of times when I had no idea what to say when your dad was on stage with me. It was an adventure, but I knew that every time we did go on the stage, as long as he was with me, that I knew everything was going to be fun and good and cool, and everybody would love it. And that's why last year, when I got the call from Ryan that Jesse passed, like each of you, a huge part of my life was gone, but a lot of wonderful memories remain. This last year has been hard for all of us, and I'm not excluded from that. I've kind of gone on a musical sabbatical, and hopefully, with Jesse's memory, and I'm sure his cheerleading from above, I hope to jump back in it and make some more music. I was telling Leslie that I shot a music video in Mexico, and it's for a song that I wrote called "On a Beach in Mexico," and I want to dedicate that to Jesse and release it really soon. So, you love to go to Mexico, right? Anyway, I love Jesse. He's got a great legacy with each of you, and the lives he's touched, and those he's learned from, and shared things that he's learned with you. And I just love him, and I miss him, and thank you.
Talking. I wasn't going to do this.
Cool, Graham.
Like that? Now can you hear me?
No, it's...
Love the mic. I feel so lucky to have been able to grow up with him he was always a teacher. Just when we were little, even through his sense of humor, making light of things when things were hard. Kelly and Jesse and I were the three musketeers. Having to grow up at a time when divorce wasn't really prevalent in the world. And a lot of people didn't understand, friends and other family members, how hard it was on us. But we had each other, and it made such a big difference. He was always teaching me things, and I remember being probably about, I don't know, 10 or 11 and being really frustrated with my mom. And he taught me even then that I needed to be the bigger person, and that nobody's perfect, that none of us are perfect, and even adults aren't perfect. Because up until that point, I really thought that she was. And so it was just really, really valuable to learn that we all have our troubles, and we all have opportunities to be better people. When I went through my divorce a couple years ago, I was so angry in the midst of it, and had so many, I felt, valid reasons to be very angry. And sitting there talking to him and sharing with him all of the things that I was so mad about, and expecting him just to be horrified. He just looked at me really calmly, and he just said, "Mars, you gotta forgive him. It's the only way you can do this. You just gotta forgive." So it's taken a while, but I've been able to do that, and the peace that it brings is invaluable. When I was growing up and I was a teenager, there were so many girls that would always come up to me and say, "Oh my gosh, you're Jesse Christensen's little sister. You are so lucky."
What?
I always thought it was kind of funny because I was his sister, you know. I was like, well, it's not like I'm going to date him or anything. But then as I got a little bit older, I realized, you know, I am really, really, really lucky, because I was the one that got to keep him for always and forever.
We're gonna let him go. Thanks.
I just have one little thing that I'd like to say. I heard this not long ago, and this reminds me very much of Jesse. When you die, a part of me is going to die with you. Want to release the wounds first?
And I looked at Jesse and Leslie and I said, "What are you talking about? I almost burned your dream house to the ground." And Jesse and Leslie both looked at me and they said, "Right, this is your lesson. What are you going to learn from it?" And you have to know, it was very traumatic, and it still is, because it was a huge deal. But Jesse had an amazing way as we've heard, to teach lessons constantly. And one of those lessons I remember is Brady walking over. We hiked from the Tetons. We hiked from, where was it, you guys? From Jackson over to the Tetons. And that year Brady had stuffed his pockets full of rocks. And this was probably 90 people hiking over the Tetons, and we were waiting on Brady, who had bleeding blisters. And Jesse and Leslie stayed with Brady the whole time. And we kept saying, "Jesse, take those rocks out of his pockets." And he kept saying, "Why?" Brady keeps finding rocks and he keeps putting them in his pockets. And that was such an important thing, because all of us kids and parents were harping on our kids, like, "Keep going, we got to do this." And Jesse had no intentions. He had no reason to make this hurry. He wanted to make sure that we got the lesson. And Brady literally showed up to camp one of the nights pulled out probably 20 big rocks out of his pockets and no socks in his cowboy boots. And we had hiked 9 miles that day. And Jesse was not angry. He was really, really irritated, but he just let Brady own it. And that has always been such a huge part of who Jesse was to me, is he always was like, are you going to learn your lesson? Are you? And Leslie and I tease because we'd say it's his coming to Jesus moment. Like, he'll come and look at me and he's like, you ready to accept Heavenly Father and do what you think you're supposed to? And I'll be like, and he's like, it's all right. You'll figure it out, Ange. But I think the gift that Jesse brought into my world was, again, many of you knew how I grew up, was my family was kind of, rustic isn't even a right word, but we would take Volkswagen Bugs and pull off the tops and make dune buggies. And when Jesse came into our world, everything became more beautiful. And our dune buggies went from these really junky cars to, hey, look, this has kind of fenders and like windshield wipers. And one of the things he did really well with that was Volkswagen Bugs. That's what Bajas. And Jesse would pull up in the summers when we'd come and meet in the summer, and he'd come in this beautiful Baja that I didn't even know was possible because the cars that we drove were so
Hideous.
they didn't really run. But we drove them everywhere. And Jesse always made things better, and that's who he is to me. He always makes me want to be better. He always pushes me to see what my lesson is, and he always teaches me, and still is obviously, about when are you going to look to Heavenly Father? What's your lesson in this? And I just want to thank Jesse. I miss him abundantly, but Jesse, holy smokes, do I love you. And I miss you so much. And I so am learning the lesson that he's still trying to teach me, because he's there. And I know he's there. He hasn't come to me. I haven't seen him this last year, but I know his spirit is living. And I know his presence there is just as powerful as it is here. And it's for me to learn how to get back there with him. And I just want to thank him for continually teaching me.
I'm gonna have you say the prayer, and then we can play music.
Okay.
Can you start the music right away?